What if the real danger to our society isn't evil people doing evil things, but ordinary people who simply stop thinking? Not ignorance, not malice, but something more subtle, the quiet surrender of our own judgment. We don't notice it when it happens. It doesn't feel like corruption or manipulation. In fact, it often feels righteous, comforting. And that is exactly why it's so dangerous. The unexamined life is not worth living. A scientist spreading misinformation, a teacher endorsing harmful ideas, a parent making choices that put their own children at risk. These are not villains. They are intelligent, well-intentioned people who have slowly allowed their ability to think critically to erode. And history shows that this erosion doesn't begin with evil intentions, but with cognitive overwhelm, social pressure, and the desire to belong. This idea isn't new. In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram ran his famous experiments at Yale, testing whether ordinary people would obey authority even when doing so felt wrong. The results were chilling. Most participants continued delivering shocks they believed were harmful, simply because someone in a lab coat told them to. A few years earlier, Solomon Asch showed how people would give obviously incorrect answers to simple questions just to avoid standing out from a group. These studies reveal a truth we don't like to admit. Our intelligence doesn't protect us from psychological pressures. In fact, the smarter we are, the better we are at rationalizing our own surrender. This is exactly what Dietrich Bonhoeffer witnessed in Nazi Germany. He saw professors, doctors, clergy, some of the most educated people in the country, embrace ideas that contradicted everything they claimed to believe. Bonhoeffer realized something unsettling. Stupidity was not a lack of intelligence. It was the abdication of intelligence, a socially reinforced mental fog. From his prison cell, he wrote, "Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Reasoning is useless." He noticed that evil carries a seed of self-destruction. It eventually exposes itself, but stupidity, the comfortable kind that believes it is doing good, is far more difficult to counter because it feels virtuous from the inside. And this is where Bonhoeffer's insight becomes disturbingly modern. Because while he lived through propaganda and mass rallies, we live through something far more sophisticated. Algorithms designed to hijack our emotions, exhaust our attention, and slowly replace our independent judgment with outrage, certainty, and tribal loyalty. Our systems, economic, political, technological, are built to reward quick reactions instead of deep thought. Social media profits when we get angry, not when we understand. News spreads faster when it scares us, not when it educates. Politicians gain support with simple slogans, not complex ideas. Under constant pressure, intellectual surrender doesn't feel like failure, it feels like relief. And our brains are perfectly wired to comply. Cognitive dissonance pushes us to reject anything that contradicts what we already believe. Stress makes us cling to simple explanations. Algorithms feed us only what feels familiar, which makes it feel true. Research today shows what Bonhoeffer observed decades ago. Stupidity is not a psychological issue. It is a sociological one. It emerges in groups, accelerates in crowds, and becomes nearly unstoppable in echo chambers. We've seen this pattern throughout history. The Salem witch trials weren't driven by evil people, but by frightened communities seeking simple answers. The Red Scare wasn't powered by malicious intent, but by the fear of uncertainty. The same mechanism resurfaced during the COVID-19 pandemic, not as a failure of intelligence, but as a failure of independent thought under global pressure. So the question is, if our brains and systems push us toward predictable stupidity, how do we resist? Bonhoeffer believed resistance required what he called costly grace, the willingness to think independently, even when it's painful, unpopular, or dangerous. Today, we would call this intellectual humility, the courage to admit we might be wrong, and the discipline to examine ideas instead of reacting to them. There are practical ways to cultivate this. First, practice intellectual friction. Once a week, read something thoughtful from a perspective you disagree with. Not to change your mind, but to test whether your beliefs can withstand pressure. Truth is not fragile, but certainty is. Second, ask yourself, what evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, then you're not holding a belief. The belief is holding you. Third, slow down your sharing. Before posting anything, spend 60 seconds verifying a source. Most misinformation dies in that 60-second pause. Fourth, embrace the phrase, "I don't know." In a world built on confident ignorance, this is a radical act of honesty. Fifth, protect your cognitive bandwidth. Deep thinking requires mental space, something we sacrifice when we fill every silence with noise, every moment with scrolling. But even these individual habits are not enough, because Bonhoeffer's point wasn't just personal, it was systemic. We need social structures that reward intellectual honesty rather than tribal certainty. Better media literacy, more transparency in algorithms. Economic conditions that reduce the constant stress that pushes people into cognitive shortcuts. When people have room to breathe, they gain room to think. If Bonhoeffer had access to modern neuroscience, he might have said it even more clearly. Stupidity isn't just moral or social, it's biological. A brain under fear and pressure defaults to simplicity, conformity, and emotional comfort. And today's digital environment is engineered to trigger that state constantly. That's why resisting stupidity is no longer just moral courage, it's psychological self-defense. Bonhoeffer was executed for refusing to surrender his mind to an oppressive system. His final words were, "This is the end for me, the beginning of life." He understood something we often forget. When we stop thinking independently, we stop being fully human. We become puppets, pulled by the strongest force around us. Ideology, fear, algorithms, or group identity. So the real question Bonhoeffer leaves us with is this: who stands firm? Who thinks when everyone else reacts? Who questions when others obey? Who remains curious when certainty feels easier? Intellectual independence doesn't require brilliance. It requires vigilance, the willingness to pause, question, and reflect even when it's uncomfortable. And that's where your part begins. This week, choose one belief you feel absolutely certain about. Spend 30 minutes researching the best arguments against it. You're not doing this to destroy your beliefs, but to strengthen the ones that deserve to survive, and release the ones that don't. If the belief survives honest scrutiny, you gain confidence. If it doesn't, you gain truth. Both outcomes move you forward. Because in a world designed to profit from our intellectual surrender, choosing to think deeply, patiently, courageously becomes an act of resistance. So ask yourself, what belief are you willing to question this week? And more importantly, are you willing to keep thinking when thinking becomes difficult?